Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on August 8th. I want to go over some of the atrocities that have been going on in Israel. So over the past 48 hours, there has been a ramp up of a claim of prisoner torture through Islamization and other torture means by the prisoner guards on the prisoners. All right. So I'm going to play a bunch of videos on this. My stance on this is that all wars have war crimes. Both sides, all sides have war crimes. You look at any war, there's been war crimes. That includes what's going on today in Israel between Israel and Hamas, and also what is going on in other regions of the world, like such as Ukraine and Russia. We're not hearing too much in the news about what's going on in China and the Uyghurs, right? And there's crimes against humanity there. There's crimes against humanity going on in South America. There's crimes against humanity going on in Europe. So the larger, if you step back and you look at this in a bigger context, there's crimes against humanity. There's crimes against certain people. I think the term genocide is used too often, but there is crimes against humanity. Against different people in a war setting, sometimes not in a war setting, such as what's going on in China. We also have crimes against humanity at a much larger scale when it comes to what governments do in terms of our food supply, in terms of polluting the air with chemtrails, trying to geoengineer the atmosphere. Who gave them that right? Polluting our waterways, polluting our food supply by GMO, genetically modifying it for the benefit of, let's say, a particular big ag company, but finding out that some of these products have endocrine disruption, or the chemicals that they spray for higher yield, but cause endocrine disruption. What about the crimes against humanity with the forever chemicals that are being produced? And I'll do another video specifically on forever chemicals and what happens to your body and how to try to mitigate the problem, because it can be mitigated internally and also externally. But so we need to keep it in the context that there's crimes against humanity at different levels. At the war level, where there's war crimes, there's also crimes against humanity in terms of policies by a government against a certain people. And there's crimes against humanity in terms of a technocracy, where you have certain groups, primarily lobbying groups, primarily large corporations, doing things for them to make a profit, but may actually end up harming the environment and harming our health. That's a crime against humanity too. And the big elephant in the room is what we've been doing with chemical weapons and biological weapons. And since World War II, near the end of World War II, we've had the Damocles of nuclear destruction over our heads. That's a crime against humanity. So there's lots of ways. Everyone is at fault. Everyone is you know, I know this sounds kind of strange, but you know, because this wokeism takes it to the extreme, but there is a set from the context of what I am saying when it comes to war crimes or crimes against humanity or being affected by people that are affecting food supplies and the environment, air, water, land, sea. We're all affected. We're all kind of a victim of this. Now, different people have different levels of victimhood, for lack of a better term. But the thing is that there is this concept that we as a collective, the human race, is causing crimes against humanity, crimes against itself. Humanity is creating crimes against itself. In addition, countries are creating crimes against its own citizens and against other nations that are adjacent or even far away. So everyone's a victim, but also everyone is culpable. And I think we really need, when I play these videos, you need to keep that in mind. Okay, the atrocities of war, the way war works, all right, is that all wars have war crimes embedded in it. Even if you have rules of engagement and all that, you'll have soldiers that will break the rules of engagement, break the code of conduct of war, and cause war crimes. All sides do this. So to say that it's just the Israelis is wrong. To say that it's just Hamas or the Palestinians, that's wrong. To say that it's only the terrorists, no. Not only the terrorists do war crimes. The United States even does war crimes. All right? Everyone does it. So get off the high horse and stop thinking that this is idiosyncratic. This is a systemic issue within the human race when it comes to war. There are war crimes, but you need to elevate it even beyond the battlefield or the battle space and realize there are groups, government, and also corporations that are doing crimes against humanity because of the things that they're doing for profit, either trying to hide something, trying to reduce the financial burden on them for cleanup. So just people need to realize they need to get off the high horse and think that it's only idiosyncratic and it's only the Israelis is wrong. Everyone is involved in crimes against humanity somehow, some way. There's crimes against humanity with this the United States socioeconomic level has been on the backs in many cases of other people or other nations. For example, strip mining, you know, from different regions of the world, and having the pollution that results to that. Right? Everyone's thinking, well, you know what, you know, maybe we'll do lithium mines and we'll have EV vehicles and we'll have all these EVs and we'll have a green planet, and not realize that that's actually creating more destruction for the nation that you're mining this lithium from and polluting the planet. That's a crime against humanity. We need to kind of elevate a little bit on this issue. It's not just the torture in a prison. It's not just the torture of civilians on a battle in the battle space, or the torture of hostages, or the torture of one military group against another military group. It's way bigger than that, way bigger on what's going on in this world. So please keep it in that context, because we're all guilty, but we're all victims too. And this dovetails into a larger concept that I have. And that is that everyone during this period of time from the crisis in October 7th of last year to the present day is that everyone is going to be cursed, and everyone and certain groups that are trying to become better, certain people that are trying to become more spiritual or more humane, more understanding, are going to get a blessing that offsets the curse. And depending on your level of repentance, or your level of trying to become a good person, will dictate the level of blessing and how much more it will offset the curse. Everyone's going to get cursed on this. Why? Because we're all culpable. And what's going on in this world? But we're victims too. And there's different levels of victims, and there's different levels of culpability. And there is this lever that we can use at a personal level to try to realize that we've done wrong and try to improve it. All right. We call this, self-reflection or repentance, or there's lots of words for this. But there is this idea of improving. Find what's wrong and improve it. All right. And there's going to be a blessing from it. And your individuals will have this curse. Bad things will happen to you, and also good things will happen to you. And the amount of good things that happen to you will be predicated on how much of a repentance or an improvement you go through during this process. Same thing at nation state level. Some nations are going to be cursed more than others, and some nations will be blessed more than others. So let's zoom into what's going on with Israel. Israel is being cursed and also blessed. Same thing with the Palestinians. It's being cursed and blessed. And in this news cycle that I'm going to play, is one of the curses that are coming down on Israel because of its war crimes that has happened recently in their or during the war, in these prisons. All right. This problem doesn't seem to have just started a couple days ago. This thing kind of goes months ago. If you look at some of the news footage, they start talking about this 3 to 6 months ago. But we also know that hostages that were held in Gaza by Hamas, raped and murdered, were raped and murdered. These hostages that they took from Israel and moved them into Gaza. All right. So Hamas also has done war crimes. So let's keep that in mind. And so what happens is there's a group of people. Let's say you are on the battlefield and people have been killed. Your buddies have been killed, right? And you are in a situation to, have some sort of revenge. It's human nature to do the revenge in very awful ways. But it doesn't mean it's right. It's against the law. It's against, code of warfare. And it needs to be investigated, and the ones that are guilty need to be held accountable. It's not the whole Israeli population, nor is it all of the IDF. It's a group of people that ended up moving toward their worser side of their humanity and not their better side of humanity. But it's happening on both sides. Hamas is doing atrocities too. Israeli IDF is doing atrocities too. But not all of Hamas is doing that. And not all of the IDF is doing it. So we have to step back and be more judicial and understanding what the issue is. If someone says it's only the Israeli fault, I think you're missing a big picture of a big piece of what's really going on in this world. We're all at fault, but we're also all victims at these different levels of looking at these crimes against humanity, like I just said. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some of these videos, but just keep in mind that Israel is at fault and Hamas is at fault, but not everybody is at fault on both. With this particular incident, war does create these situations where there are war crimes on both sides, and it needs to be prosecuted, right? And it's a shame that I haven't seen really the rabbinical class talking about this particular incident in any detail. Maybe they have, and I just haven't seen it yet. I haven't been able to find anything easily, but it's something that needs to be addressed. It's wrong to do these things that they were doing in the prison. But guess what? The United States government and its soldiers have done similar things. The Chinese do similar things. The French do similar things. The UK does similar things. So get off the high horse and think that it's only the IDF. It's not. All right. So please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video. Also follow me on X, GETTR. That way you get the announcements that the videos are being released, because a lot of times YouTube will not send the notification early enough. In addition, please help support my work. I think I give a middle ground, logical understanding of the current events to the best of my ability that will give you better insight, so you're not so that you at least you get a less biased opinion. All right. I do have proclivities to certain concepts, like I'm against socialism, I'm for capitalism, and stuff like that. But at least you will learn something from what I have to say. So please make sure that you subscribe to all the channels and help support my work. You can support my work by sharing the links, telling your social media to follow me. In addition, you can help support my work by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member on my Patreon channel to help support my work. I have thousands of videos out there for free. Thousands. So please go to my store and help support my work by donating. And you can also support my work by following these longevity routines and supplements to slow down your aging process, boost up your immune system, and you become healthier and mitigate disease progression. That's important, right? There's a lot of people just talking on YouTube, a lot of podcasters. They just tell you, what the problems and the ills of the world are. If it bleeds, it leads kind of stuff. But they're not knowledgeable enough on saying, what, you need to find ways to better your health mentally and physically. I tell you this. I tell you exactly, if you just follow what I tell you to do, you will benefit from it. So with that said, let me start with some of the videos here. Again, all wars have war crimes. All nations cause war crimes, and everyone has participated to some degree in crimes against humanity. And also we are victims of crimes against humanity. at different levels. So it's really important to be grounded on that judicial concept, that perspective, that judicial perspective. But what Israel did was wrong, and that the individuals that participated in this need to be held accountable. But it is also happening in Gaza by Hamas on the hostages. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play. All right, some videos will be longer, some videos will be shorter.
עצורי חמאס שוכבים על הרצפה כפותים, עיניהם מכוסות. הנה כאן קבוצה של חיילי המילואים מכוח 100, יחידה משמשת לאבטחת המתקן.
So this is the Hebrew version of it. So let me see if I can find there was one video that showed it in English version.
I don't think people understand the source of most current ideologies. And what this course is going to show us is where they originated and how they took control of us.
I'm looking for an English version, but there it is. I found one. Just gotta find it.
Israel's Channel 12 News recently released video it says shows Israeli soldiers sexually abusing a Palestinian Hamas prisoner. The edited video shows soldiers leading a blindfolded Palestinian prisoner away and encircling him, hiding him from view with raised shields. 5 suspects have been arrested in the case, according to the Israeli military. According to a report by Israeli rights group B'Tselem, Israel has conducted a systematic policy of prisoner abuse and torture since the start of the Gaza war, subjecting Palestinian detainees to acts ranging from arbitrary violence to sexual abuse. The report was based on interviews with 55 Palestinians from Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, detained in Israeli prisons since October 7th, most of them without being tried. The Israeli military said that it operated according to the rule of law, and any specific claims of abuse were investigated. Allegations of prisoner abuse have surfaced repeatedly during Israel's war on Gaza, adding to mounting international pressure on Israel over its conduct of the 10-month-old conflict.
All right, so that's that video. Let's hear what the Pentagon has to say.
It's time to spin and win at Empire City Casino in our $1.5 million Ready, Set, Spin giveaway. Win your share of the merits, but look, there ought to be zero tolerance for...
Israeli media today released a video showing Israeli soldiers raping a Palestinian detainee at Sadi detention camp. The footage was very disturbing. I know you have commented on the reports about this detention center before, but we now have a new evidence, which is video. Have you seen that video, and do you have anything to say on that, and also the reports of rape in Israeli prisons?
So we have seen the video, and reports of sexual abuse of detainees are horrific. They ought to be investigated fully by the government of Israel, by the IDF. Prisoners need to be treated, prisoners' human rights need to be respected in all cases, and when there are alleged violations, The government of Israel needs to take steps to investigate those who are alleged to have committed abuses and, if appropriate, hold them accountable. And it is appropriate that the IDF, in this case, has announced an investigation, has arrested a number of people who are alleged to have been involved. And I won't speak to the outcome of that investigation, but it ought to proceed swiftly. And if they're determined to be in violation of criminal laws or violations of the IDF's code of conduct, then of course they ought to be held accountable.
And actually, this is not the first rape incident we have been hearing about it.
And he should have stated what I stated, is that all wars cause these kinds of situations. And there's evidence that show that Hamas was doing something similar to, and even sometimes worse, to the hostages. So, you know, it's not one-sided here. It's really important to understand that. And that if you're actually on, you know, in that environment, certain people can be pushed over the edge.
Prisons and Israeli human rights group B'Tselem on Monday released a report saying that sediment is only tip of the iceberg, and that, you know, Israeli detention centers turned into a network of torture camps for Palestinians. It reports cited testimonies from 55 Palestinian detainees. So I know Israelis are investigating this, but would you support an independent investigation into those allegations?
So I would have to look at what the specific independent investigation people are calling for and pass judgment on the merits. But look, there ought to be zero tolerance for sexual abuse, rape of any detainee, period. That's a fundamental, it's a fundamental belief of the United States. And if there are detainees who have been abused, if they are detainees who have been sexually assaulted or raped, the government of Israel and the IDF need to fully investigate those actions and hold anyone responsible accountable to the full extent of the law.
Just the final one on that. You know, what is your reaction to that? Israelis, including politicians and lawmakers, protested actually the arrest of Israeli soldiers who are suspected of abuse and rape. And, you know, we have also seen comments from Israeli lawmakers trying to justify the, you know, rape of Palestinians. Have you seen those remarks?
So obviously, with respect to the last question, there is no justification for rape of anyone. As I said, there must be zero tolerance for sexual assault of detainees. And with respect to comments that have been made by people in the Israeli government or protests or attempt.
But he's not saying anything about Hamas. Hamas did the same thing.
To interfere with the judicial system, the military judicial system in Israel. Our principle, the principle that we believe ought to apply in Israel, is a principle that ought to apply anywhere in the world, and that is that the rule of law needs to hold.
The Prophet ﷺ said he is not a believer who goes to sleep full while his neighbor is hungry. You have a
So now,
outcry among members of Israel's far-right
this was
Palestinians coupling at the
all right,
gates
so
of the Shadowy
so
facility SD.
a lot of activity in the news has been in the last 48 hours about this issue. All right, but this goes back farther, and news organizations were talking about this even 9 days ago. But you know what really blew it up was the video that was released showing some of the atrocities that were happening in the detention camp. Now this video was 9 days ago. Weon, I think it's pronounced.
Teiman prison in the Negev desert. They are opposing the detention of 9 soldiers accused of torturing a Gaza prisoner. In response to the allegations, Israel's military had launched an investigation and took the accused personnel for questioning. The demonstrators rioted, chanted shame, and waved Israeli national flags opposing the move. The detention of soldiers also prompted an outcry among members of Israel's far-right government. It is understood that the Palestinian detainee abused by the IDF was admitted to a hospital following severe injuries that rendered him incapable of walking. Several reports by rights groups, including an investigation by the Associated Press, have emerged outlining the cases of severe abuses inflicted on the Palestinian detainees at the notorious facility. A petition was filed at Israel's Supreme Court by an Israeli human rights organization. It points that tens of thousands of languishing prisoners from the Gaza enclave, including women, children, elderly, and medics, are being subjected to brutal torture. They face physical assault, starvation, and neglect in Israel's military prison cells. It adds that in recent months, dozens of Palestinian detainees are in deteriorating health conditions and have been released from the Israeli cell bearing visible scars indicating torture. The Israeli military, however, denies ill treatment of Palestinians. IDF insists that it acts according to the international law and those arrested get access to food, medicine.
Now, like I said, I'm sure that not everybody in the detention camps are being tortured like this. All right. There's probably a little bit of this where it's being exaggerated for media consumption to demonize the IDF. But there's also situations where it's maybe even worse than what is in the media. So the question is, what's the incident rate within these prisons, and what's the severity? And we're gonna need an investigation on that. But to say that every single prisoner has had this kind of abuse, I doubt it. Just like not every hostage had abuses in Gaza. All right, the hostages from Israel and they were moved into Gaza by Hamas. Not every one of them had, torture or rape, right? It's the same thing. So just keep in mind, that's what I'm saying. It's like both sides are at fault here, and both sides are going to get cursed, and some of it is going to, the ones that rectify the problem will be blessed. But both sides are cursed here on this issue. Now, what is interesting is that it does seem as though that there's a right-wing movement in the Israeli government that seems to try to prevent the investigation to take hold. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. It doesn't matter if you're right-wing or left-wing in Israel. If you do war crimes, there needs to be an investigation, and if held accountable, if you're found guilty, you need to be held accountable. That's how it's supposed to work. But just remember, all countries, all wars have war crimes. It's that simple. So, you can't just demonize Hamas for war crimes, and you can't just demonize the IDF for war crimes.
The claim, however, has been contested by domestic and international rights organizations. A United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or the UNRWA, report released in April alleged that some of its staff members detained by Israel were subjected to severe beatings, humiliation, insults, ill treatment, and were, quote, forced to strip naked. They were subjected to different forms of abuse. Some of them waterboarding, and faced threats of rape and electrocution. UNRWA documented the release of 1,506 detainees from Gaza that included 43 kids and 84 women via the Kerem Shalom crossing. It said that they were, and I quote, made to act like animals or got urinated on, tortured with loud music and noise, or subjected to deprivation of water, food, sleep, and toilets, suffered due to prolonged use of tightly locked handcuffs.
The United States did this right after 9/11. Just remember that.
Causing open wounds and friction injuries. The US expressed deep concerns about the report and pressed Israel to launch an official probe to hold the perpetrators accountable. Since then, Israel has resorted to transferring the bulk of Palestinian detainees from the SDE Teiman to other facilities. Tel Aviv is facing international condemnation for its continued brutal offensive in Gaza that killed 39,360 civilians and has injured 90,900 others. Due to the carpet bombing, vast tracts of the enclave lies in ruins as civilians struggle to survive amid the crippling humanitarian aid blockade. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stands accused of genocide at the International Criminal Court and flouting the court's ruling that ordered immediate cessation of hostilities months ago. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
All right, let's play another one here. Okay, this was going to be a longer one, which is, I think this is a good perspective.
The correct number because the prisons and
to really shine a light on the atrocities by the IDF. All right, but again, from what I saw within the first quarter of the video, because I haven't seen the last 3 quarters of it, at least in the first, they don't talk about, it doesn't seem like they were talking about any of the atrocities from Hamas, which does happen. All right, so let's just keep that in mind. But before we play it, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements I have. I have structural nanosilvers, liquids. So you just take a teaspoon of this a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 during the cold season. Just gargle with it, swish it in your mouth for like 20 seconds and swallow it. This is a 30 ppm version of it. I also have a 14 and a 35 ppm version, which is the max 14 and the max 35. Work the same way. You just swish it in your mouth and swallow. If you haven't already, also purchased a applicator set. You get a nasal spray, a dropper, and a spritzer. This is important to carry a structural nanosilver liquid with you in a bag or to work while you're traveling. And magnesium and zinc, really important to boost up your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose for that day. Resveratrol, very important to get rid of senescent cells. It's also an antioxidant. It is synergistic with the stacking with C60 and some other of the supplements that I tell you to take each day. So resveratrol, I take it every day. It's really important. You want to get rid of those senescent cells because senescent cells build up toxins, and by getting rid of those senescent cells, you can generate in certain types of tissue that have adult stem cells, new cells. And so the average tissue telomere length is actually longer. So at least from the telomere perspective, it's actually a younger tissue compared to tissues that have lots of senescent cells. When we get older, a lot of our cells senesce and start to build toxins. And then you start to have reactive oxygen species increases, and you just age faster. You slow that down by getting rid of senescent cells and controlling the free radicals in your body. Vitamin D3, really important to absorb calcium. It's also a gene expression cofactor, so your cells will work properly. In addition, if you have an infected cell that needs to go through apoptosis, taking vitamin D3 is very important for that process. That's why it was so important in 2020. Clarity factor, very important to get rid of that brain fog and get those neurons firing, those neurotransmitters. When you are getting those neurons firing and you exercise your mind by learning new things, by staying away from negativity, by having good mindfulness, or some people would say spirituality or meditation, but good mindfulness, then what will happen is that you're going to have less neurodegeneration. So take the clarity factor to improve your concentration at work or in school and to improve improve your neurons firing those neurotransmitters. By doing that, you're going to maintain that neuroplasticity and improve it. So please go to the store and take the clarity factor every day. Vitamin C, very important for your skin and for your immune system. So take vitamin C. This also has magnesium in it. And lastly, olive leaf extract. Why is this important? It's dual purpose. This helps to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular health. How does it work? Olive leaf extract can improve your immune system by bringing down LDL and bringing up HDL levels. In addition, it can also, because because it's doing that, it's also bringing down the pro-inflammatory cytokines. So you're going to be improving your immune system that way. You're going to have less inflammation, and with the lower LDL and the higher HDL, you're going to improve your cardiovascular system. So it's really important to take the olive leaf extract. All right, it improves your immune system and it improves your cardiovascular health. You want to bring down that LDL, raise that HDL, bring down that blood pressure, and your cardiovascular health is better. Your cardiovascular health is also better when you're bringing down inflammation on top of bringing down your lipid profile, and you're improving your immune system by bringing down those pro-inflammatory cytokines. So it's all synergistic. What's happening to your immune system and what's happening to your cardiovascular system are tied together is the point here. And so this has a dual capability, boosting up your immune system and improving your cardiovascular health. And take a multivitamin. It's very important to take every day. You need multivitamins. They're cofactors for enzymes for proper cellular processes. All right. If you're short on certain vitamins, your enzymes are going to be subpar in activity. So to have your cells at maximum capability, you need multivitamins. And as we get older, we are deficient on some vitamins and minerals. So it's really important to take. This is an easy to digest vitamin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, so let's play. This is a longer video, and it really focuses on Israel's culpability with this incident and and a discussion about the right-wing mobs trying to fight the investigation. So I think this is important to listen to. But again, democracy now is very biased to Hamas and the Palestinian cause. So just keep that in mind.
Nations Human Rights Office found at least 53 Palestinian detainees. 53 Palestinian detainees have died in Israeli custody since October 7th. The UN also found Palestinian prisoners have faced multiple forms of torture, including waterboarding, sleep deprivation, starvation, electric shocks, and the release of threatening dogs. The UN says most of the Palestinian men, women, children, doctors, journalists, and human rights defenders jailed by Israel are being held without charge or trial in deplorable conditions. The UN report was released on Tuesday, a day after a group of far-right Israeli protesters, including members of the Knesset, broke into 2 Israeli military bases in an effort to prevent Israeli military police from detaining 9 soldiers suspected of torturing Palestinian prisoners. The 9 soldiers are reportedly being investigated for gang raping a Palestinian prisoner at Sderei Teman, a facility where prisoners from Gaza say they've been routinely beaten and tortured.
We're joined right now by 2 guests who've been following this story closely. Deanna Boutou is with us, Palestinian human rights attorney, former advisor to the negotiating team of the Palestine Liberation Organization. Her new piece for Zeteo is headlined, Rioting for the Right to Rape Palestinians. Her previous piece headlined, I spoke to Palestinians tortured by Israel. What they endured is unimaginable. Also with us, Oren Ziv, reporter and photographer for 972 magazine. His latest piece just out, A Riot for Impunity Shows Israel's Proud Embrace of Its Crimes. Deanna Butu, let's start with you. Explain what you found in these prisons and the significance of these revelations and this protest that broke out this week, trying to protect Israeli soldiers who are being arrested by Israel, involved with the rape of one of the Palestinian prisoners in the jail.
Thank you, Amy. Look, I think it's important for people to understand that Israel has arrested somewhere up to the tune of 21,000 Palestinians. We don't actually even have the correct number because that information has been held back. And of these thousands of people who have been imprisoned, they've been imprisoned without charge, without trial, and in effect kidnapped. The people who have been released, and I've spoken to a number of them, all of them have been reporting the exact same treatment.
Sound familiar right after 9/11?
Of extreme abuse, of torture, of being shackled 24 hours a day, of being kept in a fetal position, of being forced to eat food that is inhumane, of being deprived water, of being, many of them have talked about being raped, of being electric shocked, of sleep deprivation, you name it. And the people with whom I've spoken are young, some of them are teenagers, and some of them are older. And the stories that are coming out from these prisoners is absolutely appalling. The fact that Israel can continue to do this with impunity is what is so alarming, because nobody has been holding back. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We have the Israeli minister, who is in charge of the prisons, who's come out and said very unequivocally that the way that we can deal with overcrowding in prisons is to institute the death penalty. He himself has been reported as being one of the individuals who carried out torture against Palestinians who've been kidnapped. And so the situation that we hear of these people who've been coming out of State Teman, by the way, Palestinians call it the slaughterhouse, is absolutely horrifying.
Remember, she's a Palestinian lawyer, all right? So she's biased, but this institutionalized imprisonment and torture, and we don't know how prevalent it is. We don't know. There's no proof of systemic torture. There's incidences of torture, which are wrong, but how systemic it is, we don't know. Could be, maybe it's not. We don't know. But it's really important to show both sides of this. War crimes are happening on both sides. And what Israel's doing right now is wrong when it comes to these imprisonments and torture centers. But how systemic is it? I don't know. And nor do you. You don't know. How do you know for sure? Where's the proof? You don't know. There is incidences of this, just like there's incidences of torture by Hamas on the hostages. How systemic it is, we don't know. Let's just be honest of what we know and what we don't know. But there is a bias in the media to demonize the IDF. That's for sure. If you don't think there's not bias against the IDF in the media, then you haven't been paying attention since October 7th. But that doesn't mean that the IDF is all lily white. They're not. But nor is Hamas. Nor are the Palestinians.
Today was that for some reason, we're not entirely sure why, there was an attempt on the part of the Israeli military to try to question, and that's it, just question 9 members of the Israeli army who are accused of gang raping one Palestinian man. And rather than people backing the military police or saying we don't want this done, it's quite the opposite. We ended up seeing 2 riots, one in the actual prison camp itself, it's a torture camp called State Teman, and another one in another military base where there were not just rioters, but people who were members of the Knesset, including members of the cabinet, who came forward and said that these people are heroes and that there should be no restraints whatsoever on Israeli soldiers. So the picture that is coming out is quite dire.
I agree with with the Palestinian lawyer on this. She's right. I mean, the ones that have done things wrong in the prisons need to be held accountable. And if you have government officials, either at the Knesset or politicians of some sort at the local level or whatever, you know, trying to put these soldiers on pedestals and saying there should be no restraints and you're so patriotic and all that, it's wrong. It's wrong. But we did the same thing right after 9/11. All right. And you know how I feel about 9/11. All right. We did the same thing. We did the United States did war crimes. That means every American citizen is culpable. Because we had a government doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Like I said, before I started the videos, we're all at fault. We're all at fault. Get over it. Now we got to make the world a better place. And the ones that are doing these things need to be held accountable. And it's wrong for Israel to be doing this, but it's wrong for Hamas to be doing it too.
Nobody's doing anything about it.
Oren Ziv, you're a reporter and photographer for 972 magazine. You have a piece out just today headlined, "A Riot for Impunity Shows Israel's Proud Embrace of Its Crimes." If you could lay out your argument, you write that far-right protesters, soldiers, and MKs, that is members of the Knesset, rallied for guards suspected of raping a Palestinian detainee. Once fringe, they are now the public face of the state. If you could elaborate.
Thank you for having me. It's important to notice that while the Israeli media try to portray it as a struggle between the mob and the state, or between the army and the police that was not preventing this fight, although requested, I think it's important to see that today, because Ben Gvir and their allies are in the government and are leading those demonstrations, including breaking into State Iman, they are the face of the state, and those people are not extremists, they're the mainstream Israelis nowadays. In that sense, their sense of anger and surprise can be understood, because from the beginning of the war, since October, there was full or almost full impunity for soldiers. So we still don't know why this specific case was investigated and is being proceeded. But as Diana said, we're hearing many horrific evidence from prisoners that were released to Gaza, to the West Bank, or into 48 Israel. And it's not a unique case. So from the protester side, they understood, and the soldiers, as we published in different investigations, the soldiers on the ground understood they have full impunity. They were looting, they were killing, they were shooting from the sky, from the ground. And the Israeli public got the sense from the politicians declaring, but also just from the day-to-day war, that soldiers are allowed to do whatever they want. And when an incident like this comes, a very rare incident that the military police is coming and arresting or detaining a few soldiers for questioning and might take them to court, people are angry because they believe that the Israeli military is allowed and have a backup to do anything. And this also shows us how Israel got to the ICC and to the ICJ with this kind of approach.
Oren, you were at Bitchute Army Base on Monday, where the...
Just step back and just think about this logically. Without any bias, war is making humans, the ones that are in the war, inhumane. What's the root cause of this? Why did this happen? Well, there was this invasion that took place on October 7th. Now the question would be, well, why is that happening? Well, from the Palestinian side, they feel as though there is, an apartheid that's taking place in Israel. Why is Israel so forceful on the Palestinians? Because the stance that the Israelis have is just that the borders are going to be large. There's going to be a larger border, and there's going to be a Temple Mount. That means that the Dome of the Rock has to come down. Why do they feel that way? Because it's written in the Bible. Why wasn't it written in the Bible? Well, this was the promise that was given to Abraham. Why was it given to Abraham? I don't know, and nor do you. No one knows why that is. It's such a metaphysical, Kabbalistic thing. We have no idea on why. And anyone that thinks that they do, they don't know. But that's the three Abrahamic religions, that have all agree that there was some sort of promise to Abraham of this land, and that lineage goes through Jacob, not through anybody else. That's very clear at Mount Sinai. And it was very clear on other points in time before that, because how do you prepare a people to be receiving the law, right? The Torah, the oral and the written Torah, without going through tumultuous times to prepare them as they were enslaved in Egypt. The Palestinians weren't. That's obvious. Canaan wasn't. That's obvious. It was the line of Jacob. That's very clear. What happened? Well, Jacob had children, right? And those children went down to Egypt. When after Joseph established himself, and there was a famine. It's all the Jacob line. The whole thing is a Jacob line. It has nothing to do with Esau. Why that is? Why was this promise all through Jacob, and why did it have to go through Abraham, and the monotheism and all this? I don't know. You're not smart enough to know this. I'm not smart enough to know this. No one's smart enough to know why. But that's the fact. Now, somehow, some way, through our humanity, we got to find out some sort of homeostasis. But the homeostasis is not going to happen until the boundaries are reestablished. Now, if you really want to look at how we, controlled the land in the United States, there were a lot of atrocities too. So before you say and demonize the Israelis in the IDF, then you need to demonize all American citizens and all service members of the United States of all generations, because of what America need to do to solidify the 50 states. No one's Lily White in this. No one. And you can do this for any country and any border. What's unique about this whole situation with Israel is that there is a religious component to it that's very strong on all parties involved. But if you just take away the religious component, homeostasis for borders is going to have to be through war, and war brings out the worst in mankind.
Protests were taking place. Explain where that is and where Seteman is. These two jails, prisons.
Seteman is an army base near Beersheba in southern Israel, and Bitchute, where they were held, questioned, and later also brought to a military court, is in central Israel, not far also from the West Bank town of Tulkarem. So the protests on Monday started at Seteman with members of the government breaking into the place, and later, when they understood the soldiers were transferred to Bitchute army base, to the military court and detention center, they moved there. Also there, a member of the government and of the Knesset arrived and were inciting against the army. And also there are hundreds of people breaking into the military compound And at the protest, you could see also armed men with uniform and military weapons, probably soldiers, reservist soldiers that are friends or colleagues of the soldiers arrested, and they were protesting against the army with the army uniform and weapons. And this is a very common for Palestinians and activists in the West Bank when you have soldiers that are actually settlers or a mixture of that. But inside Israel, since the beginning of the war, we haven't seen much of that, of these kind of militias operating. And they were, of course, also masked. And in general, towards them, but towards also the people who were breaking into the army base, the police was doing absolutely nothing. As we learned later, the police was just, despite the fact the army was calling for the police, they just didn't show up. And the few policemen that were there were not doing much. I think it's important to see that this is kind of a struggle between the old establishment, maybe the center left, or the old people in the army that, you know, believe that Israel has to have some legal framework, like to do the crime towards Palestinians, but to keep them proportional and some to investigate, to have some illusion or to present that Israel is investigating itself. And the other side is people like Ben-Gvir and their allies that think that soldiers should have full impunity and also are proud in their crimes, in their attacks against Palestinians. They document it on social media, as we've seen. And this is kind of the clash that is happening in the moment.
And Diana, could you explain, you spoke to a young man named Bilal who described what he called engineered torture methods that were designed.
Let me just interject. Remember what I said about Esau's soul root gaining in August. So it's August, September, October. It peaks in October. So there may be an event that's really big in October. So the soul root of Jacob is down in relative terms in strength, and the soul root of Esau is gaining in strength. That means that Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran are going to be stronger within the next 6 months and peak in October, sometime in October. All right. There's also, because Israel doesn't look like it's running based on a rule of law with these crimes against these prisoners, that Israel's going to be cursed. So there's a curse that's going to come down on Israel on top of a strengthening of Esau's soul root. This is bad for Israel. So, and again, like I said before, the soul root of Jacob was better in April. And that was the time to really kick ass and move ahead with the two-front war. And they missed the boat on that one because of Biden, you know, tying the IDF's hands on what they could do. So at a metaphysical level, it looks to me that Israel, at least in the near term, is going to be cursed, and that there's going to be trials and tribulations, and it's going to be difficult for Israel for the next 6 months. And October is a really worrisome month, and that may spill over into a larger world conflict or an economic problem. Because, you know, there seems to be some instability because of the carry trade in Japan. A lot of people would say, how's that related to Israel? It's all related. All this that I talk about is related. And so that instability from the carry trade in Japan unraveling and causing havoc in markets will cause economic instability. And a lot of times when there's economic instability, there is more of a drumbeat towards war. See the connection now? So people need to really realize that there's a hovering curse that's coming because of some of the things that are happening. And the spiritual soul root for Esau is starting to climb at the same time. Now, I don't know of anyone that explains things like I just did. And this is the reason why you need to follow my work and share my work. So please make sure you follow and share my work. And by the way, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver soaps that I have. I have a different variety of soaps. This one happens to be charcoal tea tree. I also have peppermint and lemongrass and a couple others. And it's also important to get the structural nanosilver gels. I have two types. I have one in a tube form and one in a dispenser. You can carry it in your bag with the dispenser one. They're used the same way. They're dual purpose. You can neutralize pathogens by just putting it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your ears, around your eyes, right? Stay active for about 5 hours. You can use it as a skincare, where you can apply it. Best way to do is apply it on your skin like at night, and then exfoliate in the morning. You'll notice your skin's clearer and tighter, especially on your face. And you can put it on an abrasion, and it'll help heal the abrasion or a bug bite or a minor burn. So use it as a skin wound treatment. So this is a dual purpose product. It's made from structural nanosilver. It's high quality. Both of them are very high quality products. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Great Palestinians.
Yes, what he talked to me about was that everything that was done was not, people often think of torture, and by the way, it should never be used, but people often think of torture as a means to try to extract information, and even then it's illegal. But in this case, it wasn't at all designed to extract information. It was just as a form of eternal punishment to show who is supreme. So he talked about how his hands and his legs were shackled, that there was a circle that was drawn around him with his eyes blindfolded and kept in a fetal position for 24 hours a day, that if he moved outside of the chalk, that he would be tortured. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just him being tortured. He was then forced to witness other people being tortured as well. So he himself, the only time the blindfold was removed was to see other people being tortured, other people being raped. He also talked to me about how the small quantities of food that were being given to them, so much so that he got to the point where he was looking to see exactly how many calories were written on the various containers that he was given, because the whole point was to try to control how much food they were taking in. He ended up losing a substantial amount of weight while being held in prison, and is still undergoing very serious health problems because he was not allowed to use the bathroom for a number for about 60 days. He also talked about how all of the prisoners who've emerged, all of these kidnapped people, have scabies on them. They were denied the ability to take showers, and they were denied the ability to have even drinking water. So all of this, he said, was just as a means of showing who it is who is boss. They weren't at all.
If this is true, which is for some of these prisoners, I'm sure it was true, but if it was true, and they have their day in court, right? And these soldiers are found guilty, they need to be held accountable. But the thing is that it has to go through a court system that's not rigged. It has to be where it has blind justice, and it's going to look at the merits of the case and judge accordingly. And that's how you're going to prevent, that's how Israel will prevent a curse from coming down on itself. But also keep in mind that it's highly probable that some of these cases are overblown. But that's not saying that it didn't happen. It's just like, what's the prevalence? No one really knows. You need evidence, and and a lot of times it's hard to get. You can't just take face value with no evidence what the prisoners are saying. You have to have the evidence to hold these people accountable, to hold the IDF accountable, and the Israeli government accountable. And then you have to work up the chain. Was there instructions to be this way? If so, then the upper commanders need to be held accountable. And does this go all the way to Netanyahu? If it did, which I don't know, but if it did, he has to be held accountable. How systemic is this? We don't really know. She doesn't know. Even if there were 10 people or 20 people out of thousands, that's still a small percentage. It's not all 20, it's not all 2,000 prisoners, right? So what's the prevalence? But there are atrocities that are taking place, and these people need to be held accountable. Collect the evidence, have a court system, and then rain judgment. It's wrong what the Israelis, if this is true, it's wrong for what the Israelis did. Just wrong.
Doing torture to extract information, again, that is illegal and should not be conducted. But in this case, it was a question of exerting one's superiority over them. They were told that they must understand that Israel is superior and that Israel can exact revenge anytime it wants.
This is Dr. Mohammed Abu Samea, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, who himself was jailed by Israel for 7 months without charge.
We were subjected to severe torture and my little finger was broken. I was repeatedly subjected to hitting on the head, causing bleeding multiple times. There was almost daily torture in the Israeli prisons. When prisoners' cells were raided daily, they were severely beaten every day. We say this with full certainty, and we lived through it with great bitterness. Colleagues working in the Ministry of Health and other prisoners got out with us today. About 50 prisoners. We left behind many prisoners, tens of thousands of prisoners, living in hardship, experiencing psychological and physical torture that no Palestinian prisoner has experienced since the Nakba in 1948. Our brave prisoners are subjected to all kinds of tortures behind bars. Even the older prisoners, who have spent tens of years in the occupation prisons, have been deprived of all of their most basic rights. Many prisoners have died while they were in interrogation and were deprived of medicine and food.
Again, that's Dr. Mohammed Abu Samea, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, who himself was jailed by Israel for 7 months, only recently released. And then you have Palestinian attorney Khaled Mahajna, who was the first lawyer to visit Sde Teman. He said the situation there is more horrific than anything we've heard about Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo. We hear about people losing their limbs because they were handcuffed so tightly for so long. Diana Butu, as we wrap up, your final comments about what's happening and where the investigations are going for this and who's being held accountable.
This is a concentration camp, is a torture camp where, as Khaled has already mentioned, we've seen that people have had their limbs chopped off, oftentimes without anesthesia, by the way, where all segments of society are now complicit in this. And the fact that we don't see any investigations or even a push for investigations inside Israel, to the contrary, we see people who are pushing for the right to be able to torture and rape. It shows you exactly where Israeli society is, and it shows you that there's a failure on the part of the international system to hold Israel accountable.
Not all Israeli. See, this is another problem that I'm seeing with democracy now. They'll bring on, a one-sided argument, right? Israel is split with ultra left and ultra right. All right, religious and non-religious, and there is kind of a civil war happening within Israel. All right, there are people that are ultra left that don't want the war and that are for the Palestinians. To say all of Israel's population and society is like this, that's wrong. That's totally wrong. The thing is that there's a big group, the right-wing group, that is moving this thing forward. But to say that that it's not being somewhat debated forcefully with protests by the left, I mean, they're not paying attention to what the news is. Not all of Israel's society is like this, but it's a big part of it. It's a big part of it, and it is. You can kind of see where Israel's mindset, at least from the right-wing perspective, is moving towards. And you can kind of see that this is going to be pushing. They're going to be pushing some of these Palestinians that are in the West Bank out, and there's going to be a more of a control of Jerusalem. And with that, you start to see that the actual boundaries start to get bigger, but it creates problems with other Arab nations that leads to a wider conflict that somehow, some way goes back to the biblical borders. That's what I'm saying is going to happen. Now, you can say you don't agree with me or what. I'm just taking the standpoint that what is written in the Bible is what is going to happen in the future. I think that's a pretty safe starting point with this chaotic environment that even John Mearsheimer is saying that his theory of international policy doesn't work in the Middle East, especially with this whole idea with Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah and Iran. It just doesn't work. Well, maybe the theory's wrong. Because there's this thing is more metaphysical than realism, is neo-realism. But not all of Israel is like that. That's just wrong. I mean, just common sense would say that not all of the societies like that. There's a huge ultra-liberal part of Israel that is against the war. It's just wrong. Just wrong. And that's where you got to be really careful about the bias. Okay. All right. Now what I want to do is all right, TMR report was also bringing her on. So that was this is an interesting one. Same woman.
You know, what we saw, I guess.
The Plus you've been waiting for has landed in the US. Let me introduce you to Plus 500, the intuitive and easy to use trading app.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
This is the majority report. Same guest, Palestinian lawyer. All right. So you know where she's coming from. But this is a longer discussion about what's happening with Israel, with these prisoners, the atrocities. Are the atrocities happening? Yes. Is it wrong? Yes. Does these soldiers, these IDF soldiers, need to be held accountable? Yes. But there is a larger thing going on here. And that IDF is not the only ones doing war crimes.
Thanks for having me. So, obviously, it's not humanly possible for us to bring you on and not talk about the horrors. There's no really good news to share at this moment, but I'm hoping that I could get your thoughts on what happened earlier this week with Israeli activists and members of the Israeli government, including members who were a part of the majority coalition, storming Sidi Taiman, which is a torture camp in the Negev, to protest the fact that not that Palestinians were being tortured there, but to protest the fact that there were 9 soldiers detained and being questioned about gang raping a Palestinian prisoner. Just take us through the events of earlier this week.
Certainly. Thanks very much for having me. So this actually goes back a long time ago, but I'll start with the more immediate, which is since October of 2023. So since October of 2023, Israel took a decision that it was going to transform what was an army base into a torture camp, as you exactly put it. And in this torture camp, Israel has picked up thousands of Palestinians from Gaza and from other places as well in the West Bank, and taken them down to this torture camp that is in the southern part of the country. It's very far away. We actually don't know the full numbers. We're told upwards of 21,000 Palestinians have been abducted in this manner. The vast majority of them are being held without charge, without trial, without even knowing whether they will ever be able to leave this prison camp, this torture camp. Now, since there's been so much overcrowding, we've seen that Israel has actually released a number of Palestinians. And the Palestinians who are being released, and I've spoken to quite a number of them, are all talking about the same system of torture, of being shackled 24 hours a day, being placed in the fetal position, the shackles so tight that some people have had to have their hands.
Not one mention on either channel, not one mention by her on either channel about over 300 days of the war crime with taking hostages by Hamas. Just keep that in mind. This is what I'm saying is you got to be really careful about the bias. Both sides are wrong. Both sides are causing atrocities and war crimes. Hold both of them accountable.
And feet amputated, with daily torture, with not being allowed access to water, not being allowed access to have a shower, being forced to eat food that is filled with maggots, and so on. And so with these testimonies that have come out, and they've been coming out quite regularly since October until the current day, one would think that there would have been a great pressure on Israel to end these torture camps. Instead, there's been silence, and it took a long period of time before we even heard a peep from the UN Special Rapporteur on torture to say something. Now, what happened this past week is that we've had a number of investigations that have come out from CNN, from the New York Times, and from the BBC, and now the Washington Post, which is talking about not just torture, but also raping of people who've been held in these prison camps. And this week, the military advocate general decided that he was going to question, that's it, question 9 soldiers who are involved or alleged to be involved in this gang rape. Now, just the mere questioning of these soldiers set off a firestorm of riots inside Israel. We had first a number of members of Knesset who then pushed for people within the Israeli right, and it's not just the right wing; it's kind of mainstream now. To go
That's why I don't even like to say right wing or far right activists, because this is indicative of systemic Israeli society.
It's totally indicative, exactly. So about 200 of them stormed Bitchute in the
Yeah, just really, because the left wing doesn't want the war, or many factions within the left wing doesn't want the war. But there is a big part of society that's saying enough is enough and there has to be security. So they're discombobulating a bunch of different issues all at once, and just pigeonholing everybody into one category is almost always wrong. Almost always wrong. All Jews are evil. All Palestinians are evil. Of course not.
And they actually tried to beat the soldiers who were trying to go in and ask for them to be questioned. The 9 alleged individuals barricaded themselves, pepper sprayed the police, and so this massive riot began. From there, after the 9 soldiers were then taken from State Teman in the south, they were then taken to a little bit north of Tel Aviv, where we then saw yet another riot on the part of Israeli activists, including members of Netanyahu's own coalition and within his own party, with them calling for the...
Discover Boating and Progressive present the top safe boating tips. We may adore the ahoy from our dogs while on board. However, their safety comes first.
And with them calling for the release of these 9 and saying that these people are heroes. And so what we're seeing today is exactly a reflection of Israel, which is that they're protesting the right to be able to rape Palestinians. And we even saw within the Israeli Knesset that there was a semi-debate where one member of Knesset said, is it legitimate to be placing objects, to be forcing objects into the rectum of Palestinians? And another member of Knesset responded and said, yes, it is. It's totally legitimate. So what we're seeing now is that there's a push to demand the right to be able to
This is
rate
why
Palestinians.
this is why Israel is going to get cursed, because they're making decisions that are down a road that is evil and that is just wrong. If they take the high road, they'll be better at this. But unfortunately, now there's hubris that's getting involved, and this is wrong. What Israel's doing is wrong with this incident. I don't think it's wrong on trying to secure the borders for Israel and to have and to move back to biblical time, biblical borders, and bring down the Dome of the Rock and to have the Temple Mount. I don't think that's wrong, but you can do it humanely. Of course, there's going to be a war, but you can have a more humane war. That's not an oxymoron, but wars cause this. I mean, mankind it's easy, no matter who it is, can become very vicious. I mean, even the Tibetan monks were known for their vicious personalities in war, monk times. So I just all people have the ability to move in a spiritual existence or in a very humane, animalistic existence. And unfortunately, Israel is moving down the ladder, not the former.
It just shows you how far the Israeli society is willing to go without because there are no restraints on them. Nobody is saying that things are illegal. When you constantly position yourself as that everything is justifiable, then you can obviously justify the worst forms of human action, and that's exactly what is happening in Israel today.
Right, and the only reason we should say that these soldiers are even being detained or questioned is because of this international pressure, and because honestly Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government want to continue with the worst of the genocide in Gaza. And this also plays into their efforts to, I think, widen this war, to draw the United States into it, and to make it not about Gaza, but about how Israel is constantly under threat. I guess we could get to that in a little bit because I want to touch more on the conditions here. There have been reports now for months that prisoners were being raped with metal rods, sometimes hot metal rods, burning their anuses to the point where they no longer had control of their faculties. And this is, I think, the detention arm of Israel's categorization of all Palestinian men, or a great majority of them, and boys, as basically combatants. Can you talk about that process and how that has basically midwifed the wholesale detention of up to tens of thousands of Palestinian men? And we don't even know, again, the death toll in Gaza. I saw some doctor.
It starts with Hamas not wearing colors, and they mix themselves in the population. So how do you fight an enemy that has buried themselves in the population? That's where it starts. And then you start having, and then the IDF starts losing soldiers in this very intense urban warfare, and things devolve from there. It's not going to be pretty what's going on, but the thing is that there needs to be a major duke out in the Middle East, and either the Israelis win or the Palestinians win. That's the way you're going to get homeostasis, and that's exactly how we reached homeostasis in the United States. So I don't know where this person that's leading the discussion here, whatever her name is, I don't know where she lives. She looks like she's probably in the United States. I'm pretty sure no matter where you live in the United States, you probably are benefiting from some sort of atrocity that the United States did to the American Indian.
Citing a figure as high as 92,000 at this point.
Yes, we don't know the percent.
Amsoil runs on freedom and has since 1972. The rest of the market has been trying to follow our lead ever since. But a head start is a head start. Run with us.
Yes, we don't know the precise toll. The Lancet came out and said that it may be 186,000. Friends who've been in Gaza on medical missions say that the number is probably even higher than that. But in terms of how it is that Israel continues to grab people, kidnap them, detain them, and keep them in prison, it is because Israel has always had this system of what it's kind of a misnomer. They call it administrative detention. It sounds so sanitary as anything but. It's a very violent process in which people are picked up, kidnapped, usually in the middle of the night from their homes, children as young as 13, sometimes even younger, and then held without charge, without trial for a period of 6 months, where that detention can be renewed indefinitely, as long as they see a judge every 6 months. And it's through this system of administrative detention that we've seen roughly 40% of the male population be thrown in prison at one point in time. That's roughly about 20% of the entire Palestinian population has spent time inside of an Israeli prison. Some administrative detention can last upwards of 11 years. A friend of mine spent 11 years of his life under administrative detention, which means without charge and without trial. Now, it's not just that, but it's the process of dehumanization that leads soldiers to be able to do what it is they want to do with Palestinians. And since November, I've interviewed a number of Palestinians who were kidnapped and then released, and all of them have described similar torture techniques that have been used against them. And one strand that appears throughout all of these testimonies is that they say that the torture that is being meted out by the Israelis, it's unlike torture in the way that people normally think of torture, which, by the way, is illegal either way. But normally when one thinks of torture, they think of torture in order to obtain some sort of information. In this case, there is no information that's being obtained. It's simply to exact revenge and to show superiority. And so we've seen people who have already been convicted, who are serving sentences inside Israeli prisons, who are also being tortured, again, not because there's an attempt to extract information. Once again, that's illegal, but simply because they're trying to show who it is who is boss. And so the methods that have been used are things that it's even so hard to describe, because it's some of the worst behavior of humans that I've ever heard in my life, of raping people, torturing them. You know, one young man was telling me that at one point his hands were shackled, his legs were shackled, he was put in the fetal position and blindfolded, and around him they drew a circle in chalk, and he was kept in that position for 24 hours a day for days on end. And if he moved in any way, if he spoke up in any way, if he crossed the chalk line in any way, that was a sign that he should be tortured, and he was. And when they torture Palestinians, it's a torture that is witnessed by others. The only time that the blindfold is removed is to be able to see another Palestinian being tortured. And so the testimonies that we've heard of the ways that people are being held, the conditions under which they're being held, is horrifying. And yet it's not even moving the needle inside Israel, because everything is justifiable. And because everything is justifiable, this, of course, is going.
Once again, I'm going to tell you something you never heard before, all right? And you might want to sit down and listen, because it's going to scare you, all right? Sometimes you see a glimpse of what will be on the other side when someone dies, by the activities that happen here. Just a glimpse, but it'll be magnified on the other side. Now, what Israel is doing is wrong. I'm Jewish, and what she's saying that Israel is doing with these prisoners, the ones that are doing these things, they need to be held accountable, maybe even be put to death, depending on what the situation is. But and it's wrong. So I'm with her on that. But war crimes are on both sides, okay? But there's a metaphysics of this that's really important to understand. There are 12 tribes. In 2 of the tribes, it's Levi, and I don't remember the other one, but in the Bible, it talks about a daughter being taken advantage of by another group of people. I remember the name of the daughter. Doreen or something, or Dora or something like that. I don't remember. And the Levies and one of the other brothers sought retribution against this group of people that took advantage of one of the daughters of Israel. And they killed lots of people. All right. And there's a spiritual energy where you can be good and receive and have special abilities to do certain things, but there's also a part of it that where there can be extreme evil too. So as you get closer to good, evil can happen too. All right. So these 2 tribes end up not being able to have land. And the Levies are the ones that are helping with the temple, right? The singers, they produce the songs, right? But Levies have a certain place within the temple hierarchy, and the Kohanim, which are the priests. All right. The Levies can't have land, and they were allowed to be a part of kind of like the temple proceedings. This other tribe, and I would have to research it. I don't remember the name of the tribe. They were more dealing with scribing. So, writing to fill in or writing the scrolls, right? And the point that I'm making here is that there's a spiritual energy within certain people where they have they're a conduit and they can bring down blessing. But they also, if their mind goes in the wrong way, it can create havoc and destruction. And the glimpse that we're seeing here, what mankind in general is doing to the world and to itself, within this whole context of the Middle East, but even broader sense around the world. And the atrocities are only the surface of what happens in hell. So, some of the things that we're hearing about what's going on in these camps, the whippings and the hanging and the torture and all this. This is discussed in different texts as the body is decaying in the ground. What is happening to the soul? And what happens even further down in these different levels of Gehenna or hell. All right. And depending on what kind of person you are, it depends on what kind of atrocities you see. Where am I getting at with this? Even though there are atrocities, and this is where it gets kind of scary here, even though there are these atrocities that are wrong and that there needs to be law, we as humans, human beings, when we die, are going to be judged by our actions. And have we tried to be better people when we realize that we do certain things that are wrong? And if we have repented, then the judgment is lessened. In some cases, totally absolved. But people will be judged. And that something that may seem relatively minor in this world is really extreme on the other side. So, just keep in mind that there's a glimpse of what Israel is doing to the Palestinians and what United States did to some of the terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq, and and we captured them and all this stuff. What different countries do, what different people do on a personal level. It's all kind of it's judged, and there's there is extreme punishment, and that this punishment is literally, from these texts. I'll try to pull out some of these texts when I play the video. Maybe I can reference them, but what we're hearing and what man does to man is minor compared to what will happen in Gehenna or in hell. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's just like there are groups of people that can be conduits of this spiritual energy, and if they're good conduits, good blessing comes through. If they are negative conduits, evil, extreme evil can happen. That's part of the course. That's par for the course. It's like these people that have a conduit of this energy that can bring the energy down. Depending on what type of person they are, depends on if that energy is of good nature or bad nature. All right. Now, there's some people that don't have that ability, and they can't bring down any energy. And maybe that's better. I don't know. But the thing is that there are people that if their heart isn't in the right spot, but they are a conduit, there can be evil that ensues. And that is what we're seeing with Israel right now. That doesn't mean that it can't self-correct. On top of it, the atrocities that we're hearing, that mankind is doing to mankind, is only the surface level of what happens in the grave and in Gehenna. Now I'd have to research it a little bit, but what I remember is that there are like 3 days. There's 3 days of kind of like of decay, and there's this metaphysically, the body, when it's buried, metaphysically it's put upright in the grave. Now, obviously, if you dug the grave, you wouldn't see this, but metaphysically what's happening is that after so many days after being buried, there are spirits that actually rotate the body upright, and then there's torture to the body. All right, based on what kind of person they were. And then after that, then they go to the next level, where they go to a different level of Gehenna. Now, if you're a really spiritual person, let's say you were a person that didn't do anything wrong. Of course, everyone does something wrong. but let's just say theoretically that you were a spiritual person that didn't do anything wrong. You would die. You'd be laid to rest, and there would be no flogging and no torture to the body. And in some cases, you can kind of hear that sometimes some people just don't decay in the ground, over so many days, or in some cases even years, right? All right, but most people have done something wrong. So what happens is let's say for this mind experiment, now if this person is good, but they did something wrong, well, they would get buried, and then they would be metaphysically rotated after so many days. I think it's 3 days, and then there would be a flogging of the body. Now, Jews have a tendency to say a certain prayer during the Amida and hit the heart and pound the heart a certain amount of times, and especially during Yom Kippur. That's to lessen the flogging in the grave before you go to Gehenna. So there's torture in the grave before hell. All right. So, and then what happens is then the spirit goes to be cleansed to different levels. Now, for the one that didn't do anything wrong, my understanding is they don't get turned upright, and there's no flogging, and their spirit descends, right? And they go to Gan Eden, which is like heaven, right? Or the Garden of Eden. There's different levels of Garden of Eden, and if you're never done anything wrong, then you would go to the highest level. That's how this whole metaphysical model works, right? For the one that is spiritual but has done some things wrong, when their soul, when they died, some of the soul stays with the body, and a part of some of the souls leave the body, and they come back down to the body. They're forced back down to the body after so many days. I think it's 3 days, and then they're rotated up, and then it's flogged, and then after so many days of that, I think it's 7 days or 8 days, something like that, and then they go to, if they are decent and not so bad, then they don't have to go to Gehenna, and that just the flogging in the grave, the torture in the grave, was enough to purify their soul to go to Gan Eden, to heaven. All right. For the ones that are somewhat bad, they have to go through additional cleansing process, and depending on how bad, depends on what level of hell or Gehenna you go. So most people have to do this torture in the grave, right? And then they're, depending on how bad, depends on what level of Gehenna they're in. Now, during this Gehenna process, in the time frame for us, because everything's relative in terms of time and space, right? It's about 10 months. All right. Or 11 months. 11 months, I think it is. So 11-month process. But not everyone has 11 months. And the 11 months is our time reference, Earth time reference. It could mean that Gehenna is a lot longer in its reference because of this, maybe time slows down or speeds up. So just got to keep that in mind, that the time in Gehenna may be 11 months, but it's 11 months of our time and not necessarily of Gehenna time. So what does that mean? Is it fast or slow? So a lot of people are saying it's slow, and that, it could be, it could stretch out, seem from the Gehenna perspective, it may stretch out to 150 years. And if you're at the deepest level of Gehenna, you have to go to each level of the 7 before you get into Gan Eden, because you have the soul is so defiled that it has to go through so many different cleanses to be able to be a pure light, the soul to be pure. Now, this is written in the Zohar. This is written in a lot of commentary of what it goes on with the soul. And why do I say this in this context? We are seeing a glimpse of what mankind does to man and what God will do to the soul. Now, that's an important point that I'm making here. And just let that sink in. Most of us will be tortured in the grave and also have to go through some sort of cleansing in Gehenna. And it is way worse than anything that we have seen with man versus man. Way worse. Even though this is pretty bad. What's going on? And Israel's wrong. But what's going to be happening in Gan Eden, or what's going to happen in Gehenna to get to Gan Eden is a lot worse. A lot worse. So just let that sink in. That God is giving us a little hint of what he will do to our souls through our actions. Now, I'm pretty sure you haven't heard that from anybody unless you're a Kabbalist.
Continue, and that's why you see the riots that we see.
And in terms of it being broadly accepted, this kind of brutalization towards Palestinians within Israel, I'm struck by the fact that these break-ins by these activists seem to happen quite a bit. Whether it be all along the border into Gaza, wow, I don't know, somehow security just seems to fail all the time. And these activists who want to starve everybody in Gaza to death are just able to block all the aid trucks. I mean, what could the people who are manning the border do? Or whether it be the break-in into this torture camp, concentration camp, you could argue. It just seems like, oh, they're able to get in. What could we do? Can you speak to just almost like the tacit acceptance or almost appreciation that so many Israeli guards or people who are a part of the militaristic infrastructure there, their relationship with these activists who are at the front lines of expanding Israel and wanting the genocide to ramp up and continue?
This is a great question, Emma, because I think people often make the mistake of somehow separating the Israeli security services, the police, the prison guards, the soldiers, the army from ordinary Israelis or from the extreme right wing. They're one and the same. This is a state apparatus, and because it's a state apparatus, it reflects on the state. And it's made up of people who are members of the state. And so because of that, we see a synergy between the two of them. We see that if you look at the West Bank, where the Israeli settlers have been torching Palestinian homes, they've been going after Palestinians and killing them, that instead of the army stopping them, they're actually aiding them. And similarly, as you mentioned, in Gaza, as the aid trucks are supposed to be making their way into Gaza, we've seen that these same security apparatuses are allowing Israelis to set up, get this, bouncy castles in front of these spaces so that they can jump on the bouncy castles, they can eat popcorn, and so that our genocide is their entertainment. And this is allowed to happen. And third, as you put it, as you already said, when it comes to stage demand and the concentration camp or the prison camp.
We need stories. We need stories to understand ourselves. We are the only creature that does this unusual thing of telling each other stories.
This is just serendipitous, right? But there is synchronicity too at the same time. Iran had a hit on Rushdie, for many years because of what he wrote. And then they had someone that attacked him few years ago and took out his eye. So to think that that the Muslims are peaceful, they're not. All right, but that doesn't mean all Muslims are that way, because they're not. There's some that are peaceful, but we got to. You have this kind of behavior on both sides up to a certain point, and both sides will do atrocities.
And the concentration camp or the prison camp that is there, that suddenly they have no means of dealing with crowd control or to stop this riot from happening, but they seem to have those mechanisms when it's Palestinians who are peacefully protesting, who are demanding an end to the genocide and so on. And so the two are so intertwined. These are state. It's a state apparatus, and because it's a state apparatus, it's made of people who are from the state, and it's exactly reflective of Israeli society. So they're not going to go there. They're not going to poke a hole in the bouncy castle. They're not going to tell people to move on and allow the aid trucks in. They're not going to use any method to stop the riots from entering into state demand or otherwise. They're not going to stop the settlers from torching Palestinian homes. They're working together rather than opposed to one another.
And the other kind of hand that's doing the other aspects of maintaining the genocide is also playing up the threat of other nations within the Middle East to Israel's security. And, what we saw, I guess, over the past 48 hours with the assassination of one of Hamas's longtime leaders, Ismail Haniyeh, who, my understanding, he was considered one of the more moderating forces within Hamas as opposed to Sinwar, and this was done within Tehran, so in Iranian sovereign space. This was also hours after there was an airstrike in Beirut. Also, again, that's you're supposed to, this is not Israel's country, but apparently they can do airstrikes wherever they want. That killed a Hezbollah commander, but also injured others. The United States denied any involvement, but this is so clearly an effort by Benjamin Netanyahu to get some sort of, I think, aesthetic victory as Israeli society is kind of crumbling around him, and two, to undermine the ceasefire talks, which he has been doing, and Haaretz and other reporters have.
You can't have both sides of the fence here. You said that the right wing is in this, that the Israeli population in general is so for the war, right? Which he's wrong. I mean, there's also the left that's pushing back. All right, but she said that it's so ingrained in the Israeli population that Israel is this warmonger. All right, but then she's asking a question, and the society around Netanyahu is crumbling. And that Israel is totally against him. Well, which is it? Now, what it's really like is that you have two factions in Israel that are fighting each other. It's like a civil war that's going on between the religious and the non-religious, or the conservative or the ultra-liberal. And, there's an infighting that's going on with Israel. On top of the spiritual energy where the Temple Mount's going to be rebuilt. And you add in the red heifers and all this other stuff that's going on. There's an energy flux that's happening, and it's anything in the world that you start to see a movement. You have to, the crystalline structure of society has to be pulled apart in some way, and there's a charge force between the two, and that's where movement takes place, because it's unstable, it's chaotic. There's an energy flux, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing an energy flux within the Israeli population that allows for this metaphysical component to manifest. If it was completely one way, then there wouldn't be an energy flux. Some people have heard the term, to have a positive, you need a negative, right? To have darkness, you have to have light. To have evil, you have to have good, right? It's the same idea. There's a flux that's happening because of this polarization within Israel, all right? That's what's really happening. But a few minutes ago, she was saying that Israel's homogenous in terms of how they, for the war effort, and the atrocities that are going on in the prisons, and that there's no real difference between ultra liberal and the far right. Well, that's not true. Proof positive. How could she construct this question that she's bringing up? I mean, this is, people need to be really discerning about how the media is spinning. Now, it could be that she just has goldfish memory and doesn't know much. I don't know. But let's just rewind it a little bit.
But this is so clearly an effort by Benjamin Netanyahu to, one, get some sort of, I think, aesthetic victory as Israeli society is kind of crumbling around him, and two, to undermine the ceasefire talks, which he has been doing, and Haaretz and other reporters have highlighted this. He has been doing this now for 7 or 8 months, undermining any ceasefire process. Can you speak about that and how this is just such a farce at this point?
The bigger question is the society crumbling, or is it coalesced to a certain direction? You can't have both. What is it? The reality is that you have this flux that's going on between the ultra liberal and the conservative in the country, and that energy flux is bringing down the spiritual energy. These people
just undermine the ceasefire talks. So I think what's important to step back. If Israel were truly interested in having the Israelis return, the Israeli captives return, they know that the only way that can be done is if there is a ceasefire and if Israel releases Palestinian political prisoners. They've known this from the first day, and we're on now day 300. It's become clear that the only way that Israel can release large numbers of this.
Why are the Hamas dictating the terms of, quote, ceasefire or surrender? Israel should be dictating the terms. See, this is where the fundamental issue is. This is where the fundamental issue is, right here.
If there is a ceasefire, and that's why the ceasefire that took place in the end of November is what led to the release of a large number of Israelis. But and despite the fact that he knows this, it's become clear that he doesn't care about the Israelis at all. Quite the contrary, because what he's doing is he is constantly just amping up this genocide, and not just a genocide that is in Gaza, but he's also attacking Lebanon. He's also now attacked Iran twice, because he just doesn't care about the Israelis. But more than that, he wants to set the entire region aflame so that he can stay in office. Yep. The public opinion polls are showing that
wrong. What is happening is there's a spiritual energy coming down where it's moving towards the biblical boundaries. He is one of the conduits for this spiritual energy. And once his purpose is up, he will be done. Maybe he dies. Maybe he just goes off into the sunset. I don't know. Maybe he gets convicted. But he's one of the conduits of the spiritual energy that's taking place. This is not a Netanyahu war. This is a change of this is an inflection point of human history that has been written down for thousands of years. It's not about Netanyahu. It has nothing to do with Netanyahu.
Israelis do not want him any longer. That if anything, he's going to be the one who's held to account, not just for what happened in October, but for his corruption that predated October. And so they're done with him. And so he knows that. And because he knows that, he's willing to set the region on fire in order to stay in power. And this is the height of narcissism when it comes to being a leader, that he's willing to put everybody in jeopardy just in order to maintain his rule. He's willing to go down and commit genocide in order to maintain his rule. And it shows the weakness of the international system. If nobody can stop this monster, then what good is it that we have a system of international laws and international...
She's right about that. The whole international system is a canard. It's built on sandy foundation. It doesn't work. It never has, and it never will. This whole Westphalian bullshit was trying to stabilize after the war because of nuclear weapons. Oh, but if that's the reason why we have the UN, why don't we just stop having nuclear weapons and get that Damocles off our back? No, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. We'll build these apparatuses at the UN to talk and talk and talk and talk and not get anything done. Try to have compromise, but really not. It's total waste. The UN is a total waste.
And so on, when he's proven that all he can do is do whatever he wants and set the region on fire, because that's what's going to keep him in office and that's what's going to keep him popular.
In terms of setting the region on fire, Bradley, can we show this footage of what's coming out of Iran? This is a procession for a funeral for Ismail Haniyeh. I'm sorry, I'm terrible about pronunciations. I'm catching it from Sam. That's who I'm blaming on. But this was some footage, and this is confirmed by CNN that the funeral procession was quite large of for the Hamas leader in Iran here.
Think about a child you love. Now take away their clean clothes, access to water, and the roof over their head. Take away their safe route to school.
So for people listening on the podcast audience, you can see lines and lines of people down the road, at least a mile, right, in Iran. Yep. So there's more footage. The only reason I show that, I think that's good, Bradley. The reason I show this is because I think in the Western press, there is this incredible arrogance about what we should be doing, what we're allowed to do to a region that should be sovereign, that should be able to have democracy, to self-actualize, to have dignity, and how with our continued support for the Zionist project, the United States delegitimizes itself to millions and millions of people. And that's why this is such a precarious moment here with Benjamin.
She totally does not understand the soul root of Jacob, the soul root of Esau, and the soul root of Ishmael. And Ishmael is aligning with Jacob. Now, it gets a little complicated because some nations have a little bit of Esau. So there's a part of Esau's soul root that actually does repentance, that does teshuvah, and aligns with Jacob. And there's another part that doesn't, that gets eliminated. Now, that's been written down for thousands of years. This part that gets eliminated is the Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran soul root. I don't understand why they don't see this. It's not as simple as the Zionist project. That's such a dumb way of framing it.
Netanyahu and his government attempting to draw the United States into a conflict with Iran. Now, I have my doubts that Iran's going to respond to this because they have showed restraint. They did not retaliate in a way that was destructive when they could have after Israel killed some of its leaders by bombing the Damascus consulate a few months ago. So I'm not sure this will spark a...
Who do you think twisted their arm on that one? It was the United States government.
Regional war because of the United States also doesn't want it, even though they want to support Israel. But you can see how Israel is attempting to draw the United States in, and what that does for widespread reception among millions of people about America and our role in all of this.
Yeah, you asked a really important question a little earlier on, and you said you weren't sure as to whether the United States knew or didn't know about this attack on Ismail Haniyeh. And either way, it's worrisome, and either way, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And the reason that it's worrisome is that if they don't know what their client state is doing, that's pretty bad. And if they do know what their client state is doing, that's also pretty bad, because the idea that they would be authorizing going into another country and carry out a political assassination, again, of the person who is negotiating for the end to this attack on Gaza, is pretty worrisome. And at the same time, it also doesn't really matter, because it's become proven that it's Israel that's calling the shots, not the United States. This was clear when Netanyahu went to Congress just last week, and he was very clear in saying that he's the boss. He's the one who's doing everything. In fact, he said to Biden,
What if it's not Israel that's the boss, nor the United States, nor Iran, nor the Palestinians? Maybe the boss is God, and that God, through his infinite wisdom, is going to curse and bless certain types of people. And maybe even at the same time, what I'm noticing is that a lot of things in the Middle East are chaotic. And through this chaos, there is an emergent behavior that comes out that no one expected. Kind of a black swan kind of thing. An emergence that takes place. That something negative, very negative, emerges something very positive. Something that's tumultuous emerges something that's very serene. All right? So let's stop assuming that humans really are in charge of what's going on here. Again, all sides are at fault with crimes against humanity. But everyone on the earth is also a victim of crimes against humanity too. I think we are putting not enough emphasis on the divine and how certain events are moving into a certain direction that was predicted thousands of years ago.
who told me not to go into Rafah, and I did it anyway. It was an animatic movie. But I think that the issue about whether the U.S. is being dragged into this, you're absolutely right. Netanyahu wants this to be a regional war with the United States, not only paying for it, but getting directly involved in it, because he wants to emerge victorious. And the only way that he's going to be able to emerge victorious is if he can say that he wiped Gaza off the map, which so far he has managed to get rid of. He's managed to destroy the largest Palestinian city, which is Gaza City. He's made the Gaza Strip unlivable. And I can just see that thousands of Palestinians are going to be leaving Gaza once that border opens, because there's no way they can have a life there. So he wants to be able to say that he did that, and he wants to be able to say that he's the person who got a peace agreement with Saudi or with any other country as well. And by pulling the United States into this, that's what he's hoping to achieve, is that there will be a larger regional instability, which will then force the United States to get involved. This is exactly what he wants. And
The metaphysics on this is that the Esau component of the soul root of the United States, which it has two components. It has a Jacob soul root and an Esau soul root. The Esau soul root is going to be bifurcated. And that part of that bifurcation is the part of the teshuvah, the repentance that will allow for this messianic age to come through. Now, she's seeing this as just some sort of military alignment with, against Iran. It's way bigger than that. It's way bigger. You got to put it in the context of what it was written down a long time ago. Long time ago. All right, before I go back to the video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work. I give you a very unique perspective, all right? And I'm trying to prepare you for these world events that may, cause disruption in your health and in your finances, and you just follow my lead, and don't get caught up in these kind of biased things. There's a metaphysical thing going on here that is a lot different than anything that we've seen before. This moment in time is a pivotal moment, an inflection point in human history. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. I have two different types of probiotics. I have the veggie cap version and then also the powdered version. So please go to the store, take the probiotic. There's a scooper in here, and you just mix it with your food, and this is just the veggie caps. So it's important to have a probiotic because with a good gut biome, you'll have good metabolism, good energy absorption, and better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. In addition, when you have a good gut biome, you're going to reduce that inflammatory response in your gut. And by reducing that inflammatory response in your gut, you are going to have better stools, you're going to have less inflammation, and your immune system will be boosted up. So it's really important to take a good probiotic every day. You'll also notice that you'll have better mental clarity, and your skin will be better. A lot of people don't realize that you can see manifestations of age and of disease in different areas of your body because of a bad gut biome. So you want to improve your gut biome. It's really important. It's part of an anti-aging protocol. Go to the store and get the omega-3. This helps to bring down LDL, raises your HDL levels. That's important for cardiovascular health, really important. Ashwagandha root helps to control blood glucose levels and brings down inflammation in the vascular system. And you take it with the turmeric, and this is a strong antioxidant and also brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. Why is that important? By bringing down inflammation, chronic inflammation, you're going to be boosting up your immune system. So take this. This is very important to just be healthier, but you'll notice that you're aging slower because you're bringing down that chronic inflammation. You're controlling your blood glucose levels. Really important, especially when you don't know when the United States is going to destroy Iran. You may not be able to get to sleep at night. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. This has tryptophan and melatonin in it. It's important to get a good restful sleep regularly. Why? Because during sleep, you're detoxifying your body. It has been found that people that have chronic sleep deprivation increases the chances of memory loss, neurodegeneration, and dementia. So you don't want that. What you want is a good night's sleep. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Lignans, really important to boost up your immune system. That's a common theme for anti-aging, for longevity, for vitality, and especially in the aftershock of 2020. There is an increased prevalences of cancer. All right, now. It's important to have a good immune system. And by having a good immune system, you increase your chances of fighting these types of things. So please go to the store and get the lignans. It's a powder. You mix it with your food or with water. It also helps to improve your hormonal health for males and females. Why is that important? Because of our environment, we have endocrine disruption, either in our water or our food or our air quality. So a lot of people are starting to have endocrine disruption. So you have to do cleanses, you have to get rid of some of these toxins, and you have to take supplements that will help improve your endocrine health. Taking lignans will do that. This helps with hormonal health, really important. All right. Ask the question, why are you starting to see so much gender dysphoria? Why are you seeing the actual facial and body characteristics of people changing that seem androgynous? It's because of the food supply and the water supply. So you need to improve that by staying away from processed foods, staying away from fast foods, staying away from heavy sugary foods, filter your water, eat organic or, just better quality produce, get, vegetables in your diet and meats in your diet, balance, do calorie restriction, do, proper diet, exercise, and balance, train your mind. And when you do all these things, your endocrine system is going to be boosted up. So proper supplementation and all these other things that I'm telling you. And you're going to start mean reverting back to your youthful self. But our environment is affecting our endocrine system. You need to cut it off at the pass. Stop with the ingestion of these waters and of these processed foods and these GMOs. That way you can let the body heal, and through proper supplementation and all these other things that I'm telling you, the body will heal. This gender dysphoria and androgynous stuff wasn't around as prevalent in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. This is a modern phenomenon because of our water and our food supply. And get the vitamin B complex. This is really important for cellular metabolism. The first B vitamins are really important just for the mitochondria alone. B1 through B5 help with the mitochondria, and that will help to improve the ATP. When you have more ATP, you'll have more energy. When you have more energy, you'll have better cellular processes and better tissue. When your tissues are healthier, you're going to age slower. Part of aging is because of a decline in cellular efficiency. So please go to the store and get the B complex. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video. Back to the news.
It's surprising that this administration continues to place right into his hands rather than telling him to stop.
Surprising, yeah. So now, I would love your assessment of this. I think people think
I only get one childhood.
Social media is trying to take over my life.
It's time to take it back.
I think people think it's impolite. I don't really care about being impolite to Joe Biden because he's presided over a genocide, but I think people think it's impolite to ask this question. Has he been entirely manipulated by Benjamin Netanyahu because his brain is not seemingly working anymore and he doesn't know when
It's
Netanyahu
such a dumb question. It's not, Biden, it doesn't matter if he's being manipulated or not. He's not making the decisions. The deep state and the puppet masters are the ones that are making the decisions. That's who. It's not the president of the United States at this juncture. And that's done by the lobbying groups.
Humiliating him on the public stage. Like I'm only speaking about self-interest from a political perspective, about not getting humiliated, about trying to have some dignity. I mean, all these politicians have enormous egos. But as somebody who's been an advocate for Palestinians, you're Palestinian Canadian, and of course have been immersed in this for so long. Like, what do you see here with the Biden-Netanyahu relationship that makes this so uniquely destructive and that Netanyahu has clearly taken advantage of?
Look, I think the big thing is that Biden has always said that he himself is a Zionist. And if you look at his record of voting, he's always been on the wrong side of history, incidentally. But particularly on this issue,
Biden, in his early days in Congress, right, as a senator, didn't like blacks. He didn't like Jews. He flip-flops. And with his mind gone, the puppet masters are running the show.
Always stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel because he is a Zionist. Now, since he authorized the genocide back in October, I think that he has not only continued to dig his heels in, but I think he's dug his heels in even knowing that this would eventually cost him the election. I think that it's a mistake to think that Joe Biden stepped down and isn't going to run just because of his age. But I think that there were other factors as well, that when you look at younger voters and people who are...
His ego, he wanted to run. He was pushed out because everyone realized that his mind's gone and that we don't have a real president. And that there was a major cover-up in the Democratic Party and by the cabinet. And the chiefs of staff, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That was the reason.
Conscience. They're saying we're not going to vote for Joe Biden because he is Genocide Joe, because he's been the person who has presided over this genocide. Has he also been played by Netanyahu? Yes, I think he has. And Netanyahu is somebody who has made it clear that he wants to see a Trump presidency, that he likes President Trump, which is why he went to Mar-a-Lago. And so for him, he liked having Republicans in office because it allows him to push his agenda even further. So he's trying to push this as far as possible until the next election, hoping that it will be a Trump win, so that he can then continue the next phase of his plan, which is not only the ethnic cleansing genocide in Gaza, but turning his sights to the West Bank as well. And we've already seen this. We've already seen him start in on the West Bank with more than 500 Palestinians killed just since October.
And Smotrich being in charge of that, and also basically removing military authority and just having the settler gangs that he's a part of being now the primary authority in the West Bank's a part of that as well. But yeah, I mean, it is just astounding to me, I guess, from a real...
Like I said, West Bank is going Israel. It's not going to go Palestine. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the honey and lemon drops. This is in a 100 count. This is really important during the allergy seasons and during the cold season that's coming up. There's an uptick in pathogens that cause the cold, influenza and other pathogens. So it's really important to stock up and make sure that you have drops and lozenges so you can mitigate that irritation in your throat during the cold season. Because the moment that you start feeling that irritation, you wanna take lozenges and drops. They'll neutralize the pathogens and protect that mucosal barrier. And by doing that, you're reducing the chances of further continuation, further problems during the cold season. I have it also in elderberry zinc. This is in a 21 count. And I have blueberry in a 100 count for the drops. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a couple bags for your household. This cold season is going to get worse. All right. So you got to pay attention. All right. The surveillance for the pathogens that were popping up in 2020, there's a ramp up. I don't want to say it because I want to keep the video up. And influenzas are up. So, this year, could be problematic. We won't know for sure until October, November, December, but the trajectory is that it's going to be problematic. So boost up your immune system, take the supplements, and get the lozenges and drops for your household so you're ready. They're not that expensive. Get a couple bags for your household. And the key is to use them right when you get that irritation in your throat. In addition, I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these deodorant bars in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and in citrus. These bars are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's very high quality deodorant bars. It's for males and females. It has no aluminum in it, no baking soda in it. It's all natural. And with this, it also helps to slowly detoxify your body. So it's a dual purpose. So get a couple bars for your household. It's for males and females. It's a very high quality deodorant. In addition, we have created a utility bar called the Even Better Bar for your skin. You apply it on your skin, every day or every other day. And you'll notice that your skin is softer, smoother, and shinier, right? In addition, if you have a cut, an abrasion, a minor burn, rub it on there and it'll heal quicker. If you have a bug bite, rub it on the bug bite and the itching will go away. If you have a muscle pain, rub it on the muscle area. And in 30 seconds to 60 seconds, the pain is mitigated or completely alleviated. This is a high quality bar. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas also. And so please go to the store, get this for your household. It also helps with eczema and psoriasis. So, just apply it there. It's a great utility bar for just everyday skin health or, for, wound care. So please go to the store and get the Even Better Bar.
$40,000-foot view that Biden's emotional attachment to a Zionist project, which is a colonial project, and one that is inherently involves murdering since 1967, since 1948. It's been about ethnically cleansing and ruining millions of lives. How one can rationalize that through racism and still have an emotional connection and idealize that project in the year 2024, that's the thing that I can't put myself in that mindset. And even to tank your own electoral chances, knowing that it's this much of an emotional project for you. And I don't know. Diana, your final thoughts there.
You're absolutely right. I don't think that people realize what Zionism has meant for Palestinians and what it has done to Palestinian lives, Palestinian land, Palestinian bodies. When people try to downplay it and somehow talk of it in its nice and virgin, or even they try to kind of say that it's like, it's got many faces. No, there's really only one face, and that's the face that I and so many other Palestinians have lived with, which is a settler colonial movement that aims to remove us from our land, and in the process of removing us, erasing us, it's violent on every single level, and to somehow buy into this violence and think that this is okay is really it's not even troublesome is the word, but one would expect that in the year 2024 that there would be a wake-up call.
Neil Ferguson said it best during one of his questions that he was taking from the audience, or maybe it was from the moderator, but he was taking a question, I think it was from the audience, about Palestine, right, and the Israel conflict. And he stated, not every country nor every people deserve a nation. And if you can't win the war, you don't deserve the nation. So it's about war. It's about being able to stand up and fight for it. That's how any country is. So if the Palestinians can't win, they don't deserve it. Not everybody deserves a country. And I think that wisdom that he has, because he's a historian and he has a lot of wisdom, all right? I think it was the best way to approach it. He's Scottish, right? He was born in Scotland. And he said that even the Scots couldn't hold their land, and they were subsumed by England. And even the Scots didn't deserve the land, didn't deserve their own country, a separate country, because they lost. The same thing that's going on with Palestine. If they can't win, they don't deserve it. It's really that simple. It's a war dictates, war, economics, technology, that dictates the boundaries of a country. So let them have it. Let the war be, let it be all out war in that region. So there'll be homeostasis, because it's better to have it now than later, that this larger war later, when there's more unconventional means of warfare. This should have been happening in the 70s, where it was a lot safer to do and a lot less destruction. But no, the international community wouldn't let that happen. There is no nation in the world that didn't justify its existence because it could hold its land because of military prowess.
To ask Palestinians, what's it like to live under Zionism? What is it like to live under this settler colonial regime? And we can easily just point to what Israel is doing in Gaza, because that is what Zionism is about. It's about killing Palestinians. It's about erasing them. It's about destroying their homes, taking over their land, and pretending that somehow everything is lovely. It's a project of Jewish supremacy at the expense of Palestinians who are the indigenous people, and it's terrifying and really must come to an end.
Diana Boutou, Palestinian lawyer, former advisor to the negotiating team of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Diana, any place else there where people can find your work that you'd like to plug here?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter or X at Diana Boutou, also on Instagram, and I have a podcast that's called This is Palestine, where you can hear a lot about the stories that are not being covered in the mainstream corporate media.
Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit.
Most of the mainstream corporate media is on the Palestinian side. And I have lots of videos to prove it. There's few that are on the Israeli side. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 avocado. You can also get it in extra virgin olive oil or even coconut oil, MCT coconut oil. I have it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce configuration. You take a teaspoon of it a day, and what this does is it'll soak up free radicals, right, in your cell. And by soaking up those free radicals, your cells will have less stress and they'll perform better, and your mitochondria will be healthier. And so there's going to be more ATP, so you have more energy. And that's going to help to boost up a lot of other things that tissue does. It'll help the immune system. You'll be more vibrant. You have more vigor, more vitality. And when you do this on a regular basis, you'll have compound effects, and you'll notice that you're aging slower. When we get older, we start building up more free radicals. If you soak up those free radicals, you're doing less cellular damage, so you're aging less. This is part of the reason why, if you notice people that are in their geriatric years, they're aging faster. And it's because they're building up free radicals quicker. Well, if you soak up those free radicals, you're not aging as fast, and your body has a chance to heal. See, when we're younger, we can heal faster than we're aging. But once you get to about age 30, your cells are aging faster than it can be rejuvenated. And then over time, slowly, depending on your lifestyle, but over time, it builds up and you're aging faster and faster and faster. But if you start soaking up those free radicals and do other things, like I've been telling you, with all the products that I've been plugging today, if you take them and you do this every day, you're soaking up those free radicals and you're improving the cellular processes, you're improving your gut biome, you're bringing down that inflammation, and you are reversing the effects of the natural aging process. And when you do that, there's a compound effect, and you're aging slower, and you see the effects in year 1, year 5, year 10, year 20. You start feeling it. You start feeling that you have the energy almost right away, like within 3 days. But you really see the slowing down of the aging process when you take advantage of the compound effect. So take my advice, take a teaspoon of this a day. It does wonders, and it's synergistic with the stacking that I keep on telling everybody to do. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the avocado, the extra virgin olive oil, or the coconut oil version of C60 to help. C60 is a buckyball molecule that is lipid soluble. That's why it's in an oil, and it'll soak up those free radicals. And by soaking up those free radicals, you're improving your tissues. You're bringing down the cellular stress. Really super important. It's a major pillar for the anti-aging protocol. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and improve your health. Thank you for listening. I know that some people that are going to be listening to this may not agree with me. That's okay. All right. But I think there is a metaphysical battle that's going on. And that we really aren't in charge of this. But there are things that the IDF has done in these prison camps that's wrong, and they need to be held accountable. So Israel, in terms of mistreating prisoners, it's wrong, and the ones that have been doing these acts of war crimes, they need to be held accountable. Israel is at fault on this, at least some of the soldiers. How far up the chain, I don't know. We don't have the evidence. But this is also happening on the other side. Hamas is also doing war crimes. So let's just keep that in mind. Thank you for listening, and hopefully mankind can find a way for lasting peace, because peace is better than war. So thank you for listening, and have a nice day.